The cosplayers? All right, boys, let's outside. Let's strap in, baby. Ooh, let's go. Let's strap in, everybody. Let's get it going, baby. This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be a good night, baby. It's been a week, so let me just say I got COVID. The fact that this DNC was in Chicago, like I was gonna be able to show Grim all the coolest spots. I was like my homecoming, like I was gonna see a bunch of people that I knew in Chicago, and I didn't get to do any of that. It was so unlucky. I'm like still mourning it, honestly. I wish I could have gone live while I was there to kind of cover like the dialogues that were happening, because I feel like now we have so much to talk about. So the first day we were there on Monday, right? I got up early. I did my IRL stream. Let's look at that VOD actually. Okay, so here, wait, this is the moment that I wanted to show you, or like start the conversation on actually. There was a moment during the protest, if you guys remember, a smaller group, they're probably anarchists, although I don't know them for sure. Yeah, so like the people with the anarcho brat flag, which is really interesting, right? I mean, a lot of people were memeing about this, but this was being held by like the radicals that were trying to do more. They were trying to escalate, essentially. All right, this group was like trying to escalate. We don't really know what group they're from, although if you like with reasonable deduction, you can assume that they're like this group called Behind Enemy Lines. All right, and so Behind Enemy Lines had a series of protests both before the cosplayers. All right, boys, outside. Let's strap in, baby. Ooh, let's go. Let's strap in, everybody. Let's get it going, baby. This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be a good night, baby. So yes, there were this group that was trying to escalate. Yeah, they were saying Butchers of Gaza are that way. Like we need to go closer to the convention.
The Butchers of Gaza are that way.
You know, fuck what the state allows us, the route that the state allows us to do. And like that's a fair thing to say, in my opinion. Like if you're given, like if a protest is permitted, that is the state recognizing and like telling you that what you're doing has no potential to challenge the actual power structures that are responsible for the thing that we're protesting. If it actually challenged the DNC, if it actually had any potential to upset anybody in the DNC, then we wouldn't have been given a permit. I'm kind of shocked because like I feel like during George Floyd, like protest movements already figured out that like we shouldn't work with cops, that we should never be working with cops, we should never be welcoming them into our spaces, we should never be there was a permit. Yes, yeah, this was like very heavily permitted, and it was actually a very long and drawn out process of getting the permit that happened over months, if not years, before the DNC. They had to sue. Yeah, they had to sue in federal court to get to where they are now. The city wanted the protest to happen downtown on like Columbus Avenue, which is like the furthest east. Literally, you go further east, you're in the fucking lake. If you go further east than Columbus, where they wanted the protest to be, it would have been in the lake, you know? So this was the compromise with the cops, was to put it here. You don't need a permit to protest. Yeah, 2014 and 2020 protest culture was way more radical and clear on who the enemies were because there were no mass orgs leading them other than BLM chapters. You're right. You are right. Yes. Does BLM not apply for permits? No. Why would we? Again, applying for a permit is still just like telling the cops where you're going to be and what route you're going to take. I don't even think they do in LA. The weekend marches that I go to in LA for Palestine, I don't think those are permitted either. You don't need a permit to march. Like, you don't need a permit to protest. Of course, there were some BLM marches that were permitted. Yes, some of them were. However, even during some of those permitted marches, there were groups of people who were willing to escalate and to do more radical things. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that every single person in a protest needs to do this. I'm not saying every single person at a protest needs to be like fighting cops and shit like that. That is not everybody's role. Everybody's going to have a different role. However, in my opinion, when there are people who are willing to escalate, who are willing to put their bodies on the line and are willing to like push further past where our, you know, state fucking sanctioned leaders or whatever it is are willing to go, we should support them, because that is what Palestine is asking of us. Palestine is asking us to escalate. Us being people who have been following this conflict, who understand the severity of the suffering of the Palestinian people, we should understand that the methods in which we go about getting their liberation should not be fucking hindered. Like we should not be holding back. It's not something that we should be like clutching our pearls and wringing our hands over. Like this shit needs to stop now. This blood is on our hands, and what are we doing about it? It's a really important conversation to have.
The stakes are too high for this fucking bullshit.
I was thinking of that Navy vet that scared pigs during BLM protests. Yes, and like this is why I yell at cops at protests. I don't just do it because I'm live. Like I did this at protests for a long time before I was live. It's because I know that I'm a white guy and I'm protected. The police are not going to be targeting me or giving me any, like, they're never gonna fucking touch me. I'm like, I have a shield, dude, you know? And so I want them to know that they're not fucking safe here, that they're not welcome here, that we don't want them here. And if they fucking pop off, we're gonna make their lives hell. Like that's how they should all feel all the time. And that makes people safer. If you guys watched at the UCLA the night the police raided, I saw cops moving, I ran over to them and I started screaming at them. And then suddenly there were like 30 fucking people all around following this group of cops moving around, yelling at them. And then when those cops approached and they tried to enter into the encampment, and there was a group of two lanes, like literally just two lanes, one line and another line of students sitting on the ground, the cops knew that they couldn't bust their fucking heads in because we were all surrounding them, pissed the fuck off and yelling at them. Like, can you imagine if they were able to just like walk up there totally unhindered, or even worse, if there was like fucking protest marshals leading them there? You know, they would have just beat the shit out of those kids sitting on the ground. They didn't do that because they knew it would have escalated, and they didn't know what the response would have been from the group. You understand? Like, that actually matters, and it is actually like something that keeps people safe at protests. This is not a criticism of any particular people. I think wearing like these safety vests and like you have to understand, like here's the like ideology behind like the vests. It's not even that they love the police or anything like that. These people think if they act in some kind of way, if they, you know, if they do certain things, that the police will not be brutal and violent to the rest of the protesters. This is not true. If the police want to be brutal and violent, they're going to be brutal and violent. Peace police or like the marshals are not going to prevent that from happening ever. But also, they like validate this idea that police constantly use, which is collective punishment. Right? That if one person acts up, the police are then clear to just use violence wantonly against the entire group. Of course, that is like not morally correct. If there was like justice, like the marshals would be there to defend the people from the police, right? Not the other way around. But I think the peace police, the protest marshals, which, by the way, you guys understand where that word comes from, right? Like, you know what a marshal is, right? That's just another name for police. Like, people were like, why are you calling them peace police? It's like, bitch, they call themselves that. They literally call themselves that. But anyway, on Monday, we saw them trying to go like off of the path, and we didn't follow. We saw them on the live stream, like they passed us and they went into the park. And apparently they kept going. All of my journalist friends, like the crew, that homies that I was hanging out with, they all followed them. That was my instinct too. But I could also tell that like Grimlow was like really uncomfortable with it, and I didn't want to like, it was our first day out, and I didn't want to like, you know, push the boundaries of it and shit like that, you know. So we didn't follow them. But this is what happened. They actually did get to the fence. They took down the fence and they went in. And you can see it's the same people. Needed more bodies? It did. And that's like why, like, again, you don't have to be the person that's at the front of the line. But if you're in a situation like this, you should be thinking, what can I do to make people who are willing to escalate and people who are willing to do this, like, what can I do to make this possible? And like actually like being a body in these spaces does make a difference. Like, it does affect how the police treat them. If this was thousands of people, then like the police can't really do shit. Numbers is a huge thing, right? And so like I don't necessarily disagree with them trying to bring people from the original protests. And also like I think people were like, oh, well, they're children and stuff. Like, I understand that, but like I also think they were being very clear that they were like, we want to challenge the actual DNC. We're gonna go do more radical shit this way. It's not like they were saying like, chill, you know, like, hey, we're gonna have a kids thing over here. Like, that's not what was going on. Okay, so like, I don't think you really needed, like, there was a safe area of the protest for families. There was this area of the protest. So I don't like this idea that like you have to, you know, that a protest can't do both. That a protest can't accommodate, you know, people with families, people with disabilities, whatever, and also have this happen. Like, I think that's like bullshit. That's a false like dynamic. You can have both. It is 100% possible. In fact, this protest had both, and I think this part would have been more successful had the, you know, had the Yellow Jackets not been like so directly confrontational with it.
Look, we're not asking people to put their families at risk. We're not asking women and children to put their babies at risk. The fucking U.S. government is. We're asking people who are the fighters, who have a fucking heart and a fucking mind. The fucking butchers of Gaza are that way.
Did they get arrested? I think there was like 2 arrests this day. I think there's like, there weren't that many arrests this day. However, the next night, because like, you saw a lot of people, if you guys were following this conversation, a lot of fucking dumbasses who don't know shit and have no, like, weren't in Chicago, don't protest probably really. Like, they were all like, why didn't more people go? Like, why didn't more people, or why didn't they organize their own protests? Like, why do you have to do it at somebody else's protest? Why didn't they organize their own protest? They did. They did Tuesday night. They did Sunday night. They did Sunday during the day across multiple neighborhoods in Chicago on Sunday. They literally had like vigils for Palestine that were family friendly and not confrontational. Like, it was just like like in public educational like meetings where like dozens of people would show up and just learn about Palestine and spend time in community with each other in that space. They literally did that. And then Tuesday night, they protested outside the Israeli consulate, and the cops showed up in the thousands, totally overwhelmed them. And there were like 80 arrests, including multiple press members. I don't know why people are saying that. It's really fucking annoying to hear.
This way! The DNC is this way! The DNC is this way!
Yeah, so people did end up going and breaking in. There wasn't much outside of that. Here's a video from Jeremy. This is one of my friends. This is one of the arrests.
Everybody's fucking wanted! Everybody's fucking wanted!
Yeah, here's another one.
Charlie Henry was heading more guys on the CDU, and Charlie heading 130 left right now.
Yeah, so this was Monday. Like, I wasn't there for this. I didn't know this happened until I saw the videos on Twitter later, you know. But if more people were there, and more people went through the fence, now it becomes a much different situation. Whereas it's like 100, 150 people who did this here, you know. But if there was thousands, this becomes a different situation. And, you know, you're closer, you're louder. Like, it's harder for them to ignore. Like, the conversations that people were having around this were just very, very annoying to me. If you really like have taken in the gravity of what's happening in Palestine, if that lives in your heart with the weight that it deserves, I'm done marching, dude. I'm done doing like permitted marches. I was talking to a lib about the DNC, and he mocked the size of the protest. Doesn't help your argument that we should listen to the uncommitted if we want to win the election. When you say tens of thousands are going to show up to protest and you guys barely had a few thousand, there you have it. A liberal telling me the protests need to explode and escalate so much more. Yeah, I mean, they do, 100%. They do. They need to be bigger, and they need to be more radical. Like, we need to take risks. We need to like fucking push and like do things that are scary. What we've been doing is not working, and we can't stop. We can't quit. We have to continue fighting. And I don't know what that looks like, but like it's something has to fucking change. Like, we owe it to these people. The blood is on our hands, okay? It's your tax dollars that are funding this. What are we doing about it? Like, what are you willing to do about it? It's like a very real thing we need to all be asking. I was a little like disappointed with how everything like turned out with regards to the protest movements this weekend. And the mayor and everybody gave a little press conference, and they were like, you know, we beat it. Like, the protests were inconsequential, essentially. And I think if you watched Kamala's speech on Thursday, you know, like that speech was her saying, I don't feel shit. I feel no responsibility or pressure to have to care about you at all. Did you guys see this? I believe it was on Wednesday. The Chicago police, this guy was on a subway platform overlooking a protest. Okay, so if you can see like this angle that the camera is at right now, like directly behind these cops, like in this field over here, is the main park where everybody was meeting and like everything is happening. There's a road to the right here, and underneath there are like thousands of people for the protest. Okay, so this guy that the police are grabbing right here is just standing on the platform and waving a Palestinian flag over the barrier. I don't know why the cops felt the need to like fucking suppress this guy for doing this. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it gets worse. So the cops are like putting their hands on this guy. Absolutely no reason to do so. Also, like they're very much outnumbered. The fact that there are only 2 cops here, like these cops could have been kettled in an instant. This shit could have been diffused in an instant. But what happens? The protest marshals come in dressed exactly like the cops. And they start being even more aggressive with the guy. Here's another angle of that. You know what I learned? What I learned from this is that the middle of the country needs an education, specifically this group of organizers. You know what is so weird about that is that like I actually like don't agree. Like I don't know. Maybe like I think that there obviously needs to be reflection by the organizers and like you know what happened here, but I like got my radical education in Chicago. Like Chicago fucking went hard for Black Lives Matter 2020. Like Chicago was popping the fuck off. So I don't think it's a Chicago specific thing. I think there's just a lot of cops there, man. The cops are the root of it all. Like as much as we can critique the organizers and the peace police and the marshals and all of that, like it's the cops that cause all of this. They overwhelmed us. Like there's nothing we could do about it. I don't know what they were doing here, but marshals serve a good purpose generally. I think it depends, you know. Let's read this. So this was a zine made by some abolitionists in LA in 2023. Peace police are police. How protest marshals sabotage liberation and protect the state. Resistance as liberation. Free yourself. Nothing about peace policing is necessary. We do not need to rely on specifically designated people who are given authority to keep us safe. We each possess the authority, judgment, and autonomy to keep each other safe. This is a responsibility we should hone collectively. We do not need to rely on marshals to block off intersections. We will do it on our own. Our hands and eyes are as good as theirs. Our voices are just as loud. Let every protester take on whatever role they can. By participating in the process of keeping us safe, we can both ensure that our protests are secure and grow everyone's skills and instincts. In Blessed is the Flame, an introduction to concentration camp resistance and anarcho-nihilism, author Sarah Finsky describes efforts at violent resistance and sabotage within Nazi concentration camps. They explain, the nihilist concepts of negation resonate deeply with these acts of sabotage, offering a framework through which we might think about acts of resistance not as a mean of liberation, but as acts of liberation in themselves. By taking action yourself, you are liberating yourself even for just a moment from the grip of the state, from police control, and from hierarchy itself. At a time when political and economic possibilities are so bleak, these acts of liberation are meaningful, beautiful, and mobilizing. They should be encouraged and held up. We should teach about defending our right to such liberation at every turn. Peace police strip us of the learning and liberation that can be won from protest, instead reproducing the hierarchies, fear, and discipline that are used to maintain oppression. The most beautiful moments of a protest are when police are afraid, perplexed, or on the run. The purpose of peace policing is to mitigate all of that. When we depend on peace police to mediate the state's governance of a protest, we sacrifice our autonomous power. We fall into a position of dependence, as though we must be given power by someone or some entity above us in order to act. We give up on what is most liberating and effective because we have learned helplessness. We have learned that decision-making authority can only lie in certain official people, such as the police, protest marshals, representatives ordained by a nonprofit, and organizers who are chasing celebrity. Think of the types who promote themselves on Instagram at every protest, making an ostentatious show of how much they're doing and how important they look in photographs with a bullhorn at the head of the crowd. So I think this is true, and I said it at the beginning. I'm not saying every single person needs to fucking fight cops or throw bricks or be the most radical person at every protest, okay? I don't want you to do things you're not comfortable with. I don't want you to go to a protest and feel unsafe. I don't want you to go to a protest and feel like, you know, you have to like do something that puts you at risk. If you're not comfortable with the risk, don't take the risk. However, if there are other people who are willing to take that risk and willing to escalate, we have to know, as people who understand the gravity of the situation in Gaza, as people who understand the gravity of the situation in America under capitalism, the fact that 80,000 people a year are dying due to lack of health care, that there's violence baked into every fucking second of this society. And if there are people who are willing to escalate and actually challenge those power structures, we should do what we can to support them. And that might just mean following them and being a body in that space as it's happening. That might mean, if you're a white person, like, you know, standing in between a cop and a more marginalized person who's willing to do more. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to stand there and use your whiteness as a shield so other people can, you know, fuck shit up. Diversity of tactics. Do what you can, what you have access to, what you're good at. Horizontal organizing is crucial for diversity of tactics. 100%. You need it is diversity. It is diversity of tactics. We're going to be fighting Kamala all 4 years that she's president. Like, we're going to be in the streets, bro. Like, we're going to do that, right? Right? Burning it down is not really an option in this very moment. It might be next week. Who knows? We don't even know. Shit can change in an instant, you know? But we're not there yet. And so you have to make political calculations like that. It fucking sucks. Keep your head straight. Keep organizing your communities. Keep fighting. Keep going out in the streets. Keep escalating. You know, build yourself up to make it so that it's hard for you to be, you know, taken down. And build your community up. Know your neighbors' names. Get a passport. You got to do all this work. All of that work, and then all you have just one day, you know, you might have to like hold your nose and do something that you don't politically agree with, but you know is going to be better for you and your trans friends and your black and brown friends, right?